Hello, I'm Scott Stornetta, and welcome to another episode of Our American Dreams, where we interview a very broad cross section of people from all walks of life, but whose common characteristic is that we consider them among the most honest and wise in America. Today we have John D'Agostino, and anyone that's not familiar with John, you're welcome to Google him. We deliberately don't talk about all of his many accomplishments because all that matters is that he's honest and wise. But that doesn't prevent you from finding out a little bit about John. And I'm sure some of that is going to naturally surface in the conversation. But again, we're trying to avoid the standard trope of talking about how famous someone is or something like that, because that's not what this is about. Welcome to the show, John.
Scott, it's such a pleasure to be here. It's such a pleasure to speak with you as always.
So, John, we've got a birthday coming up, one that you or I will never reach, a semi-quincentennial. Thank goodness. Think about all the maintenance and upkeep we'd have to take. If I were to project what it would be like if I were 250 years old, based on purely a linear extrapolation of the number of medications I have to take as a function of age, then you know, there'd hardly be time in the day to do something besides pop pills. But a nation is different than an individual, so I don't have to worry about that. And who knows, John, maybe that whole comment of mine, that whole monologue will end up on the editing room floor. Let's turn to the core questions here. John, is there someone whom you have known personally, perhaps an ancestor or a relative of a previous generation, that you admire as one who epitomized realizing their American dream?
Yes, Scott, I'm going to be very stereotypical here. I'm going to say my father. And everybody I think has that experience with their dad, good or bad. Um, my most vivid memory, and let me back up. So if I had to summarize my father's influence on me in one word, it would be, or two words, it would be uh, work ethic. And it never struck me as most of us do. It never struck me till I was older. And I took my children to see my childhood home I grew up in, which I have fond memories of. I had a happy childhood, and I hadn't been there in 35, 40 years. And as we drove by, my youngest, as 6-year-olds are often want to do, made a very insensitive comment about how dilapidated that home was. And my first instinct was to say, "Oh, it's probably aged." And then the flashback hit me, and I said, "No, that's always what it was." And so the first thing I just came to that sudden realization of how incredible my mother and my father were in building that childhood fantasy for me, given the relatively modest place we came from. But my most vivid memory of my father, the one that I still get every now and then, although the street lights don't time is the same way, but he would come home from his job, probably get in around 5:45, 6:15 p.m. And I'd be waiting for him with my glove and his glove and a ball. And he would rush, maybe scarf down some dinner. And by 6:30, 6:40, we were outside playing catch in the street. And I have this unbelievable visceral memory that still carries to this day where I was having a great time. And then as dusk settled in, I would start staring or I'd side eye these streetlights because I knew that when they went on, he had to get into the car and go to his second job. And so to this day, I have this fear of the streetlights turning on. And I kind of forgotten over the years why, or anxiety is a better term than fear. And I realized that's where it came from. And so I had the stereotypical immigrant dad who worked like a maniac. He was tough. There's no question. I treat my children a bit softer than he treated me. But the notion that his priority upon coming home waiting for his second shift at I won't go into details, but decidedly less glamorous. Not that his first job was that glamorous. He worked for the Longshoremen's Association, but his second job was decidedly less glamorous. The fact that he spent those minutes with me, and he was a crap baseball player. I mean, he was just awful. He did not a sports guy in any way, shape, or form. Um, that work ethic distilled down is my most precious memory and what I associate with that dream of coming to this country.
That's a wonderful memory. Feel like we're channeling George Will here, uh, fitting in America's pastime into the
Yeah,
conversation. Well, that's terrific. All right, well, let's talk about where that led you. What about you? And again, with little variation, I read the same of the core five questions. So let me put it out there. In what sense has your own life, with all of its challenges as well as successes, been a realization of your American dream? And can you describe the process?
sure. I think the American dream, to some degree, at least as I understood it, as the child of immigrant Italian parents, was about um, optionality, opportunity, for lack of a better word. Now that didn't never meant it was never instilled upon me that that opportunity was guaranteed. It was never a certainty. In fact, I'd argue I grew up with kind of stereotypical, um, hyper anxious Italian parents that the cards were stacked against me. There wasn't this promise of a better life, but there was the option or opportunity of a better life if you worked hard enough to seize it. And so I just think about like my background, right? So my parents never went to college. I actually don't know if they finished high school. Um, I went to public school in Staten Island, New York, and I was lucky. I had an aptitude for tests. I was never the smartest kid in my class, but I always tested really well. I was able to just sort of get into the zone, and I think a lot of I see this with my own kids right now. Even the smartest kids, the challenge is stamina. And I was just lucky. I had that sort of stubbornness to sit through a 3 hour test, even at, 10, 11 years old, and maintain my pace, maintain my cadence. And so I tested above my intelligence level. And that afforded me certain opportunities. And I was very lucky to have a parent, a mother, who, despite her lack of education, was passionate about it and would source out opportunities wherever they go. I remember she found out about this high school, this extraordinary high school in Manhattan called the Regis High School, with a lower acceptance rate than Harvard, but completely need blind. So some kids were parents of children of billionaires, some were children on welfare. And she got it in her head that this is where I was going to go. One of the top high schools in the country, it's an extraordinary place. And she managed somehow from Staten Island as a dental hygienist assistant and someone who cleaned homes. She managed to track down the headmaster somehow. And one day he was at our house for dinner. To this day, I have no idea how she convinced him. I mean, I kind of know because she was a professional nagger. But I got to sit there, and I was 9 years old. So this was a solid 4 years before I was supposed to go. And I remember sitting there and having him tell me about this wonderful opportunity. Regis is a scholarship school, 4 year scholarship for everyone who gets in. And at that point on, we had a goal in the house, which was to get in. And so the way she spoke to me about it was in very sort of the language of immigrants. It was, you're not guaranteed this. There are other children in worse condition than you, both children who are here, whose families made it over, but also children who never made it over. And they deserve this as much as you. So it comes down to your willingness to recognize this extraordinary gift you've been given by the fact that we were able to make it here. My mother came on a boat out of stereotypical Ellis Island lore, and it's completely up to you. So the impression given to me always from a young age was America doesn't guarantee you anything. There's no right to anything. There's no promise of anything. But what it does offer is an opportunity set that, not to say it doesn't exist anywhere else in the world, but doesn't exist in many places of the world. So there was an intense, it's weird, Scott, there was gratitude about just having the option, even if you failed. There was tremendous gratitude about that optionality existing for someone like us. So I had a little cutout from a newspaper article about Regis, and she taped it to my bedroom door that I shared with my sister. And was able to scrape together money to buy some books to help me practice for this test. And that became our goal. That became our focus. I played sports. I was active. I had friends. I socialized. But she took this one goal as it constituted the entirety of the American dream for me. I recognized that what a sacrifice she was doing because a lot of kids my age in that financial condition, they were getting jobs at 12, 13 years old. They were doing something to contribute to the family. That was my goal in her eyes. So I didn't have to get a job. We've managed to figure that out. And so that was it. It was the assigning of a goal and the willingness and opportunity to work for it.
That's just a really inspiring story. It reminds me, just if I can catch the phrase, grateful just for the opportunity, not whether you could realize it or not, but just for the opportunity. And I remember there's a pretty famous talk that you can find online of a pilot who in the Vietnam War was shot down and his injured so seriously that they didn't know if he'd ever be able to walk again. And he had this dream of becoming a pilot of the world's fastest airplane, the SR-71. And he made a very similar comment when he talked about his life. He says, what was inspiring to me was that I had the opportunity. I had no idea whether I would achieve it or not, but it was so fulfilling in my life that I had the opportunity to pursue it. So just an echo in that person's life. Okay, I'm going to move on because, you know, many question whether the American dream is still realizable. And while we try not to give too much airtime to a cynical view of the world, I think it's important that we address that group of people that may be looking for additional hope or validation. And that's the reason that we have this third question, which is you've had a fair survey of what's going on in America. And I'm sure that you found some things that are going well, but also some things that definitely could stand to be improved. And so I ask you, can you imagine one thing in American life that, were it to change, would allow more people to realize their own American dream? And I clarify that this is sort of if you could if you could wave a magic wand kind of question. It doesn't have to be
Right.
practical.
Right.
You don't have to tell me how it would be achieved, but what's a one thing that you
Yeah.
wish you could change?
I appreciate that you said it's magic because I think there's a big difference between asking that question from a policy perspective and a magical perspective. And so magically, I would have our country develop a healthy relationship while maintaining the principles of free speech with 100% consistency. And this is where the magic part comes in. So zero deterioration in our right of free speech. I would find the right balance or cadence with truth and free speech. So I would find that magical balance, or I'd find that magical. So whether it's online communication or I think that feeds our interpersonal communication, I think we got hit with a technology we weren't ready for as a species. It's been co-opted by misinformation. It's been co-opted by emotion, good and bad. And I think we would magically be transported to a place, whether it's in the future or just a different way we think about it, where we can leverage this technology, communicate freely, but have a better understanding of truth versus manipulative misinformation. Doesn't mean we'd all agree, just to be clear. We would not all agree at all, but we'd have a shared foundation of fact, and I don't even know if we'd be more civil to each other. I'm not sure because people can people just naturally tend to disagree and get angry about it. But I do think I'd eliminate to the greatest degree possible misinformation.
Okay. All right. Well, again, a heady wish. Okay.
But I'll say one more thing about it, and I'll say why. Not because, and look, many things that I think are true might be proven as untrue. I think the defining characteristic right now of communication, and I'll just say I'm in the investment world. So the way I view the defining characteristic of investments right now is nihilism. And I think nihilism is a function of despair. And I think the despair is being driven by misinformation. In other words, there's depending on where you are in the world, depending on what your belief system is, depending on there certainly is bad in the world. There's no question. But the impression that all is bad, I think, is driven by misinformation. I think it's targeted misinformation. It advantages certain groups. Let's just say in the investment world, it advantages short sellers to make you believe that everything is going to zero, that it's all nonsense, it's all a Ponzi, whatever it is. It advantages people who are culturally short this country or just global civilization. And unfortunately, there are people that way, either for monetary or philosophical gain. It advantages them to spread misinformation about how bad things are.
That's a really interesting, that's a captivating phrase. People that are culturally short.
Some people just want to watch the world burn, Scott. It's
Yeah,
just true for
yeah,
whatever reason.
very interesting. Okay, well, speaking of just the opposite of those people,
Yep.
we come
Yep.
to the fourth question. And that is, you're on this program because there were some people that felt you were among the most honest and wise that they knew. And yet, we'd like to expand this so that we sort of crowdsource the honest and wise throughout the nation, irrespective of faith, socioeconomic status, location, politics. And so I ask you, have you given any thought to this question? Who is the most honest and wise living individual that you know personally? And can you tell us how you reached that conclusion?
So I was going to be cheeky and say you, um, but we're still getting to know each other. My sense is in some time it'll be you. Um, there's a gentleman that I've known for quite some time. I call him my intellectual man crush. His name is Alex Lipton, Dr. Alex Lipton, and he's currently the head of quant for Abu Dhabi Investment Authority. And I had the pleasure of meeting Alex. I even forgot how I met Alex. Alex used to live very close. I met him through MIT. That's how. Yes, I became involved with MIT about a decade ago. I got introduced to Alex. He's got some title, Chairman Emeritus of the Media Lab. I forget what it is. Um, but I truly believe there are people, and you're the one exception to this rule that I know, Scott. So because I've been lucky enough to work to like be deeply embedded at places like MIT, the word genius is thrown around a lot. I'm flattered that people think I'm so wise. Um, it's rare, in my experience, it's rare that you meet people whose brain is wired in a certain way, scientifically, to solve incredibly complex math problems, to think of I really do think if you meet those people, they're generally not for outside consumption. They have a hard time communicating, and that's okay because it's like if you meet a bodybuilder who can lift 1,000 pounds, it's going to be tough for that person to thread a needle, right? They're physically wired for a different purpose. And so when I've met these people at MIT and Caltech and other places who are truly solving the world's toughest scientific problems, it's very rare they can have this conversation. You're one of the few exceptions. Alex is definitely more towards the inner lab personality, but he's such a sweet, wonderfully and he will describe himself as being on the autism spectrum. He will self-describe himself like that. And so but he's right on that cusp of being able to have this conversation, but not really. But when he cares about you, there's a part of his brain that fires, and you want to sit there. So I have these. I've had before he left for Abu Dhabi for this incredible job. We would have coffee once every couple of weeks. I would beg him to have coffee with me because I get to just sit there and get this brutally honest, yet loving, yet caring interaction with him. And I'll tell a quick story about how about the way he works. So when he moved to Abu Dhabi, he said to me, John, I want. He's not purely in crypto, but he developed an interest in blockchain and crypto. And he asked me for a favor. He said, "Would you introduce me to the best people you know in crypto?" This was years ago, before you and I met. And I said, "Sure." And I gathered a list together, and I wrote an email and introducing them. And I wrote like a paragraph just lauding Dr. Lipton. That's how wonderful I thought he was. And he would respond and he would say basically, yes, I know John as well. And after after about four or five of those, I said, "Ooh, Alex," I said, "Alex, I don't mean to be needy, but like it's a little off. It makes it look like we don't know each other, and it decreases the probability." And it wasn't. And I actually spoke to his daughter about it, and I said, "Am I being needy?" She said she laughed. She goes, "No, no, no. He doesn't understand the social niceties." So I said, so I explained it to him, and he said, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And his daughter had said, "No, no, John, he loves you. He thinks you're brilliant." I said, "Okay, okay, it's fine." So I had this awkward conversation. And then the next time in his response, it was like 3 pages. And I had to call him back and say, "Alex, no, 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 no. That's equally awkward." And so it's so rare you get to meet somebody at a brilliance level that I could never achieve. I mean, in his spare time, he solves physics problems that no one else can solve. Um, and so I think when you're so fortunate to find that combination of brutal honesty. His wisdom is of a certain type. I mean, he's philosophically wise, but I think no more than the average smart person. His brilliance is really a deep understanding of how science works. And then you apply that to I don't want to speak down, but almost like a childlike, brutal honesty. That to me
Candor.
is candor. That's a great way of putting it. That to me, I just feel so honored and fortunate to have this individual give me, the time he gives me, the most honest and wise
One
individual I
thing
know.
I find interesting, and you're not the first person to discuss this, is people that feel that they're geniuses, but the thing that makes them wise, what often comes up is their warmth or their caring, their
Yes,
concern for others,
kindness. Yeah.
so so that it can be applied in a helpful, beneficial way. That's
When
great.
my when my daughter interviewed you, you were kind enough to have my daughter have a little TV show, and she interviewed you. She was a bit nervous. And on the ride to the New York Stock Exchange to film, she said, "Daddy, is he like?" Because there's the Anthony Scaramucci. She loved the interview with him because he was very funny, and she said, "Is he like Anthony Scaramucci?" I said, "No, no, not really. He doesn't he cracks some jokes, but he's not as jocular as Anthony." And she said, "Well, but Daddy, is he?" And then she named it somebody else who I said, "What?" I said, "Like he's kind, Dahlia. He's kind. So with kind people, you can allow yourself to be a little bit vulnerable. And so it's okay to tell him you don't understand something. And so we'll practice how to handle a tough interview, and we'll practice how to handle a kind. So for a kind person, you have a wonderful opportunity to express confusion, fear, and vulnerability that might otherwise not turn out well. And so when you have those moments with somebody who can teach you something and is kind, you should take them because they're not going to come very often. So that's what I think about you, and that's what I think about Alex.
All right. Well, sounds like pretty rarefied company.
Yeah.
I do want to give you a final opportunity to say really anything you want to share with the American people. The strict wording is any final thought or advice you'd like to share with the American people.
So my favorite poem, um, Dylan Thomas, do not go gentle into that good night. And it's obviously associated with death. I would ask the American people to do not go gentle into that good night of nihilism. I really, I just be radically realistic about where we are as a country and where you are in your life, but be relentlessly optimistic that the average person is good. Um, the philosophy behind this country is still sound, and fight like hell to avoid being brainwashed by both an algorithm and a technology that skews towards the bad parts of our personality. We all know how that works. It rewards pessimism, it rewards negativity, it rewards
And
sensationalism
contention.
and contention. Um, Healthy contention is wonderful. It's a wonderful thing. It's what this country was built on, debate, protest. But the technology that giveth, it taketh away some of that. And just fight it. Just understand it. Understand it's beatable too. I mean, just Twitter X has for you and following. The act of just simply switching to following, just to expand out, extrapolate that out to your life, Switch to following, not for you, switch to following. But follow people you disagree with.
Absolutely.
That's equally important. Don't let yourself become a victim of that. And because as a really great professor at Harvard Business School said this to me while he was Bob Merton, long-term capital management. That's genius, invented
Sure.
Black-Scholes. And somebody asked him flat out, like, did you regret that? And Bob said, you know what? If God came down right now and handed me the dice and said, Bob, you get to roll them again, start from scratch. I think two things are true. Most people wouldn't roll that dice. But even if you would, you'd be insane not to choose right now to be born. You just would. I mean, if it was random, if you're born any time in human history, right? You don't get to pick the exact year, the year before NVIDIA goes public. You don't get to pick that. If the Lord came down, whatever Lord you believe in, came down and said, "Here's the dice, roll them again any time in human history," even in the body you're born in now, you'd be crazy, just mathematically, statistically, not to choose today. So just remember that.
Pick now. I like that.
You would. We all would.
All right. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap this up. This has been another episode of Our American Dreams, and I'm so grateful that we had time to spend with John D'Agostino. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.